The original Dragon Ball series was one of the most beloved and some would argue the best Dragon Ball series so far. With its mix of fights, adventures, and characters, it's easy to see why it's always been a fan favorite for many. I know some like it just because of its originality, others like it because of the length, but some of my favorite things about the original series is the filler episodes. Out of the 153 total episodes of the original Dragon Ball anime series, 21 of them were reported to be filler episodes. What is a filler episode exactly, you may ask? Well, a filler could be many different scenarios or reasons, but mostly it's just an episode that doesn't showcase a dramatic event that could alter the story's timeline. Most of the time, creators of the anime will generate filler episodes because it outpaces the manga. To break it down shortly, they'll create the anime faster than they will the manga, so in order to stay on pace with everything, they'll create an on-the-spot story, usually just for 1 or 2 episodes or so, just to give the manga creators more time. Now that we have that broken down, what if the filler episodes were actually canon? How much would the main story timeline actually differ if they were canon? Well, today, ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to break down each of the filler episodes throughout the original Dragon Ball series to see how much of an impact they'd make if they did become canon. If you would like me to do this with every Dragon Ball series, then make sure to leave a thumbs up and comment. Definitely hit that subscribe and bell button so you can stay up to date with my Dragon Ball What If videos, where we break down scenarios and theories as to what would happen if certain things happened differently in the Dragon Ball series. Now, without further ado, let's get into the video. Like I said, we're basing this specific video on the original Dragon Ball series, which first aired on 1986 to 1989, spawning 153 episodes in total, with 21 of those being filler. Now, there's a lot of episodes or mangas that could pass for both canon and filler within the same segment, but for this video we're going to be focusing on just the ones that are 100% filler. And we're going to start off a video with the episode 30 titled Pilaf and the Mystery Force. Now, what's interesting about this episode is that it's the second episode of the Red Ribbon Army saga, which is a pretty important timeline. The episode before this was titled The Roaming Lake, is where we see the original group go to their separate ways after the tournament, and we follow Goku to Nam's village. The episode centers around Goku helping Nam's village find water and defeat Jiris, or Giris, however you want to pronounce it, from scaring the townspeople. In the episode Pilaf and the Mystery Force, we see Goku get his dragon radar stolen and sold at a pawn shop. After acquiring it back, Goku finds Mai and Pilaf with a 4-star Dragon Ball that they escape with. This obviously upsets Goku, but alas, karma wouldn't be far off. A short while later, the leader of the Red Ribbon Army gets a 4-star Dragon Ball from the same shop as Pilaf did, which is impossible as there can only be one. We later find out that the shop dealer sells fake 4-star Dragon Balls, which prompts the leader to kill the shop owner. So when this happens, we obviously see that Pilaf's Dragon Ball is fake too. Now, there's not a lot of things we can take from this episode, as nothing of significant happens. The only real things that could affect the timeline is if the crooks could easily profit off of creating fake Dragon Balls, which could have altered a lot of the main story progression. The only thing I could think of that could have had a lasting effect from this episode is possibly when Piccolo used the Dragon Balls to wish for his youth so he can fight God. What if he ended up acquiring the wrong Dragon Balls? Unfortunately, this episode and the fake Dragon Balls would have just prolonged situations instead of changing timelines, so on to the next episode. Episode 31, Wedding Plans. This is also a pretty pointless yet short episode where we see Goku continuing his journey in search for Pilaf. The episode revolves around Chi-Chi preparing to marry Goku, and the Ox King preparing a giant feast by roasting a pterodactyl that swallowed the legit 6-star Dragon Ball. Shu, one of Pilaf's henchmen, dresses up like Goku in the most unbelievable disguise I have ever seen. I mean, how the Ox King fell for this, I mean, come on, what even? Regardless, Pilaf is able to run away with the 6-star Dragon Ball, and the Red Ribbon Army capture the Ox King. Now, before we come to a conclusion on what this episode might affect on the actual timeline, let's include the next couple of episodes as well, because they're also filler and pretty much follow the same filler timeline. So the episodes The Flying Fortress Vanished and The Legend of a Dragon follows this short little story. Now, within the Wedding Plans and the Flying Fortress Vanished episode, we can't really make anything of that. However, within the Legend of the Dragon episode, we see that Roshi tells something very important revolving the Dragon Balls. He tells Krillin and Launch that the Dragon Balls used to be one giant orb that was created by gods. When this happened though, it angered a lot of people wanting it, which prompted the gods to split the giant orb into 7 separate orbs. Now obviously we come to realize later on that Kami is the one who created the Dragon Balls to spread happiness and goodwill to those on Earth. But in Dragon Ball Super, we're told that the Namekians stumbled upon the Super Dragon Balls and harvested some of the crystals from them to make the Dragon Balls. So realistically speaking, Roshi may not be completely wrong. So what would it be like if Roshi's story stayed within the actual timeline? Well, in that particular case, that would mean that there are actual gods we haven't seen yet that possess the abilities to create Dragon Balls that create wishes. Also, if we're going off of the Dragon Ball Super timeline, the Namekians can continue mining the Super Dragon Balls for more Dragon Balls if they wish to so choose, which would mean a lot more wishes. Well, maybe actually. I don't know, it gets confusing. Nonetheless, Zalama is the one who actually created the Super Dragon Balls on year 41, which means that someone had prior knowledge all the way back in the original Dragon Ball series about Zalama, who was mentioned in the Dragon Ball Super series. So the original Dragon Ball and Dragon Ball Super has a lot more ties to each other than a lot may think. Episode 45, Danger in the Air. This episode is one of the only filler episodes that don't tie into multiple fillers in a row. It's its own standalone episode. This episode takes place at an amusement park called Dreamland, and we see Goku and the gang enjoying themselves while subsequently getting into their normal antics. One of the biggest things we can take away from this episode is the bandit Haski, which by all accounts looks like the female character Launch. Haski is a very intelligent bandit who occasionally works for the Red Ribbon Army. During this episode, we see her and her manipulative tactics and masterful disguise to acquire the Dragon Balls. In a very funny yet edited scenario, she disguises as a fortune teller and tells Goku she needs 2 balls in order to read his fortune, which prompts Goku to pull down his pants and reveal his, well, you know. Although a very comical episode, it actually is very dark at points as well. Haski not only tries to make off with the Dragon Balls, but she plants a bomb within the theme park. Although Goku eventually defuses it, it's pretty hardcore for a Dragon Ball episode to potentially blow up a bunch of people at a theme park. Regardless, if this episode was canon, then we'd see Haski within the main timeline. She really doesn't care about anything other than money, and I could foresee her using her quick intelligence to cause havoc in West City. Now, no, this character really isn't powerful, possesses crazy strength, or even hones superpowers, but she is very smart and could pose as an annoying character like Pilaf. Regardless, this was a very surprising yet hilarious episode. Episode 79, Terror and Plague. This episode is actually very interesting and could pose a very important threat if it was made canon. This episode surrounds a young girl named Chao and her village, as they're constantly being threatened by a duo named Terror and Plague. There's really no reason for this duo to cause havoc except for maybe just being dickheads. However, Goku eventually comes to their rescue. Now, what's interesting about this duo, Terror and Plague, is that they would come off as a typical one-off weak characters who are just annoying and don't pose an actual threat. But they possess the weapon known as the Gourd of Mist. This contraption can trap anyone inside, sort of like Roshi's evil containment wave. The only major difference is not only will the person who's trapped within the Gourd of Mist be turned into water after a few hours, but it also has the capability to give that person's power and abilities to whomever drinks it. Goku finds himself trapped within the capsule, but eventually breaks free. But what if that wasn't the case and Terror and Plague left him in there? Boy, would that be a defining altering event that could mess up the Dragon Ball timeline. Like I said, Terror and Plague was ultimately defeated by Goku, but what if a bigger, more evil threat came to the possession of the Gourd of Mist? They could essentially trap anyone inside and drink their power and possess their strength and ability. Could you only imagine if Pilaf or Piccolo was smart enough to take advantage of this contraption? What about if it made it into the Dragon Ball Z timeline? What if someone smart like Dr. Gero or Babidi, of all people, possessed such havoc? It's probably a good thing that the Gourd of Mist was filler, because this could pose a giant threat to the Z fighters if it got into the wrong hands. Episode 81, Goku Goes to Demon Land. We're going to skip a filler episode or two because they weren't really all that interesting, and I'm going to mention the episode Goku Goes to Demon Land. This is also a very interesting episode as it features a place that would eventually make it into the Dragon Ball Heroes timeline, and it possesses a very dark presence. This episode centers around Princess Misa, as she is captured by a very powerful demon known as Shula, and obviously brought back to his place known as the Demon Land. Now, it could be said that the Demon Land and Demon Realm are virtually the same place. I mean, by my knowledge it is, and it would rather hone very powerful fighters like Michikabura, Demigra, Dabura, and a lot more. The reason this place is even inhabitable and not sealed off is because Shula's powerful sword is wedged in the doorway, which keeps the place open. Eventually, Goku is able to rescue the princess, defeat Shula, and close the demon land gateway for good. But what if this place actually existed in the canon timeline? Well, like I said, this place holds insanely great power, and if it was eventually opened back up for anyone to enter at their own will, it could be very problematic. For starters, Shula, after getting beaten by Goku, could train up an army of demons to eventually escape and wreak havoc amongst the Z-Fighters. One of the stipulations, though, is that these demons really don't like light. So the opposition would be that Shula and the rest of the demons would need to kidnap characters and bring them back to the Demon Land. I think this whole premise would actually be pretty neat, and if Shula's sword is that powerful to keep the Demon Land open, I feel like that with enough power it could open the portal back up again. Who knows, but this was a very enjoyable and interesting story with pretty cool demon-like characters. Episode 82, The Rampage of Inoshika-cho. This episode really isn't that impactful, however it does paint a very bad light on characters that would eventually know to come and love. In the episode, we see once again another monster terrorizing a village, only this time it's not exactly the same thing. The monster known as Inoshika-cho is this giant purple doe bear-like creature that terrorizes a local's village. And for 100,000 zenny, the locals agree to pay Tien and Chiaotzu to get rid of them, which they do. Well, kind of. You see, Tien and Chiaotzu are in the cahoots with Inoshika-cho and go from town to town acting as if they defeat him, when really, they only pretend to just to scam the locals. So hypothetically speaking, this paints Tien and Chiaotzu both as money-hungry, knieveling crooks. Later on within the series, we're formally introduced to the pair when we see them sort of become cheaters and sort of villainous because of their leader Shen, but they eventually change into a good pair. But if this episode was to be canon, it would really paint a dark image on the two very unique and lovable characters, basically comparing them to Pilaf. Now, it's not really known why Chiaotzu and Tien do this, other than for their own greed, but luckily Goku eventually puts an end to this situation, which is good. Because if you know me, then you know Chiaotzu is literally my favorite character throughout the whole entire series. Episode 127, Quicker Than Lightning. We're skimming ahead once more all the way to the Piccolo Jr. saga. In this episode, we follow Goku as he trains with Mr. Popo and is eventually sent to Mount Rumble to acquire the sacred crown. This crown, once more, shocks the wearer and eventually leads them to having better agility and quick senses. Obviously, this is a very important thing, if it were canon, and it would help us get a better understanding of how Goku evolved so much quicker. The regular timeline, Goku just does some senses training with Mr. Popo, but no sacred crown or Mount Rumble was ever mentioned. So it would be pretty cool to see not only Goku, but others train this way, maybe characters like Krillin or Piccolo and such. Regardless, it isn't canon, so it's never really actually happening. The Sacred Crown could definitely be a pretty cool premise behind improving training in one's agility and speed. Episode 129, The Time Room. This is another episode that I'll sum up very quickly, but would have some insane repercussions, good and bad, if it was made canon. Once again, Goku is finding himself doing some of Mr. Popo's odd training sessions. After sending Goku off on all of these weird different locations to train each of his senses, we see Mr. Popo lead to him to one of the most interesting places yet, the Time Room. Within this room, Goku can go back in time to train with anyone he wants. He eventually goes back in time and battles Master Mutato, and I totally botched that name, who is the trainer of Roshi and Shin, and he would eventually get a glimpse of young Roshi as well. This premise is insanely cool and would be so interesting to have canon, because not only could Goku go back in time to train with old fighters, but he could also visit and learn their origins of a lot of places and meanings. He could go back and visit the beginning of the Kais, or view the creation of the Dragon Balls from the God Dragon, or witness the beginning of Boo of all things. Now obviously I'm not sure if the Time Room could fulfill these sort of requests, but I'd like to think it could, as it's a time room of all things. But seeing Goku battle arguably the greatest martial arts trainer of all time, Master Mutato, which once again I botched that name probably, is probably the coolest thing I've ever seen within a filler episode. What an idea in the time room that would be cool if made canon as well, because not only could Goku use it, but any other character could use it as well. Episode 152, Mystery of the Dark World. A while has passed from our last filler episode, and now we see Goku pretty much grown up. The main story ends within the episode The Victor, when Goku beats Piccolo at the tournament. Fast forwarding afterwards, though, we see Goku and Chi-Chi grown up and preparing for their wedding. But alas, the Ox King's castle is engulfed into flames and Goku has to put it out in some way. They acquired the Bancho fan, but to no avail, so fortune teller Baba sends Goku off to the magical furnace. This is a place where the living and dead can meet each other, which is where Goku finally meets and gets to talk to his grandpa Gohan. This is monumental and would be insanely cool to see revisited, because you could literally revisit any character that had died. Now, if the furnace within the magical furnace ever shuts off, the evil dead spirits could overtake the entire world, so obviously that's, not a good thing. But Goku eventually repairs the holes at the bottom. It sucks that after that we don't really see mention of the furnace anymore, and that the flames were eventually put out by Roshi. But it still would have been insanely cool to have the magical furnace become canon so we could see more situations with Grandpa Gohan and learn more about him regarding his life and the early years of Goku. Episode 153, The End, The Beginning. Finally, we reach the very end of our video, and the very last filler episode of the original Dragon Ball series. This is arguably one of the most popular filler episodes as we finally see Goku and Chi-Chi marry after helping extinguish the fire from the Ox King's castle enough to retrieve the wedding dress. Within the episode we also see a very cool character that I would love to see canon. Her name is Anon. Anon is the guardian in the furnace of the 8 divisions. She's not necessarily an evil character as she prevents the flame from depleting within the magical furnace, but she and Goku have a pretty cool battle. She sort of resembles Chi-Chi with her character design, and also has the ability to grow into a giant version of herself. Though she eventually understands why Goku needs to put out the flames, she sort of comes to terms with it, and we see Goku patch the magical furnace, escape before being engulfed into flames, and finally marrying Chi-Chi. Once again, I think if the magical furnace and Anon were canon, it could pave for some really cool moments going into the Dragon Ball Z series. And that's it for today's video, guys. If you enjoyed, please leave a thumbs up and subscribe. I would like to do more of this, so if you guys did enjoy this, then most definitely leave a thumbs up and comment down below and tell me if you would like to see more of this. Like I said, I would like to do this in chronological order, so Z would come next. But yeah, if you guys like the whole idea behind me figuring out what would happen and what could possibly happen within the rest of the timeline series if we infused filler episodes into canon, then like I said, leave a thumbs up, subscribe, and comment down below. That would actually help out the series tremendously. Without further ado, this has been Dragon Ball Media, and I will see you in the next video.